What's up, Powerlifting Nation? Today we are going to be talking about the uncrowned king of powerlifting, Rondell Hunt. I have already made a video about Rondell Hunt's history, but long story short, for the last 7 years, Rondell Hunt has not been able to compete in the IPF Federation. And throughout the last 7 years, I believe that he would have been able to collect 7 world titles. Why? Because he is just so much stronger than everyone else in the under 120 kg weight class. Mainly because of his training totals, but also because he competed in the USAPL, a different federation from the IPF, in 2023, and he totaled 1,045 kilograms. This was insane because the world record in the IPF in the under 120 class is 978.5 kilograms. So he was more than 65 kilograms ahead of this world record. So that is where we stood. Rondell Hunt hasn't been able to compete in the IPF for 7 years, which is a massive shame. However, the political issues have finally been resolved and he is now able to compete. Unfortunately, he isn't able to compete internationally this year, but he will be able to next year in 2026. However, his first competition back is going to be the Powerlifting America Raw Nationals. He is from Trinidad and Tobago, so he is a guest lifter at the Powerlifting America Raw Nationals. But this is a really exciting first competition back because the Powerlifting America Raw Nationals is by far the most competitive national competition in the world. But you could even argue that the Powerlifting America Raw Nationals is the most competitive competition in the world, including the World Championships. No, Sheffield is the most competitive, but after Sheffield, you could argue that winning a Powerlifting America Raw National title is the most difficult title, just because there is so much competition in America. So yeah, this is a very exciting competition for Rondell to have his first competition back in and to start his reign of terror in the IPF once again. When I first heard that Rondell was going to compete at the PA Nats, I was excited because I thought that we would be able to see the battle between Rondell Hunt and Bobb Matthews. Bear in mind, these guys have been going back and forth on social media for about a year now, and these two are both in the 120 kg class. Bobb Matthews is by far the best under 120 kg powerlifter in the world, if we don't include Rondell Hunt. And they've been hyping up the battle. However, unfortunately, we are not going to be able to see the battle between Rondell Hunt and Bobb Matthews. Why? Well, Rondell Hunt was given the invitation for Raw Nationals after the registration for Raw Nationals was closed for members of Powerlifting America. And unfortunately, Bobb Matthews had decided to not compete at the Powerlifting America Nats. And so we won't be able to see the battle between Rondell and Bobb, which is a shame. However, I'm not completely upset. Why? Because I think that if these two compete right now, I think that Rondell is winning easily. Why? Well, 1 month ago, Rondell totaled 1,045 kg in his gym. However, the crazy thing was that he was 35 kg away from his max squat when he did this total. So this indicates that he is able to total about 1,075 kg, maybe even more. And that is crazy. It is 100 kg more than the world record in the IPF right now. And I think right now Bobb can't compete with that number. I think Bobb can probably total about 1,020 right now. We saw back in January he did 1,020 kg and it looked very difficult. So yeah, I think right now it isn't the time for Bobb and Rondell to compete, because I think Rondell will be able to beat Bobb, and it wouldn't be a very exciting competition. So I'm not too upset that the competition isn't happening. And because Bobb isn't competing, and also because Rondell is a little bit tired, Rondell has decided to not go all out at the Raw Nationals. So I'm assuming he'll probably total about 1,045 kilograms and probably go sub-maximal on each one of the lifts. And this would still be a crazy performance, but it wouldn't be like an insane performance. We'll have to wait until later this year, or maybe in 2026, until we see that. However, now let's get into Bobb Matthews, because Bobb Matthews has been making a few weird decisions over the last year or so. We'll start off with Sheffield. I made a video about how I believe that if Bobb Matthews had decided to go to Sheffield, he could have won the whole competition. However, basically, he decided to not go to Sheffield because he felt disrespected by SBD, and he felt like he wasn't getting the same treatment as the SBD athletes. And this was a weird decision to me, because Bobb Matthews has talked about how he wants to be seen as the GOAT, and he wants to claim many titles, and Sheffield is the most prestigious title in powerlifting. So for him to forego this competition, especially when he had a strong chance of winning, it was a weird decision. However, moving forward, he has now decided to not go to Powerlifting American Nats. And because he isn't going to Powerlifting American Nats, he also can't be selected to go to the World Championships later this year. So he is foregoing a World Championships. And this was a weird decision. Not many people understood this decision, especially because Bobb could go to the Powerlifting America Nationals and win with ease. And he could also go to the World Championships and win with ease. Obviously, because Rondell is a guest lifter at PA Nats, he would still win even if he lost to Rondell. And obviously, Rondell can't compete at the World Championships, so he would be able to win the World Championships easily. So it was a weird decision for Bobb to not decide to do these two competitions. However, Rondell has decided to go to the World Games later this year in China. The World Games is basically powerlifting's version of the Olympics. It's a competition which has all of the sports that aren't in the Olympics. But lots of people have been questioning Bobb's decision, but I want to say that I kind of understand Bobb's decision. Let me tell you why. Well, Bobb has made it clear that his main aim right now is to beat Rondell Hunt. He wants to beat the best of the best. He moved up from the 105 to the 120s just to beat Rondell Hunt. And this is crazy because Rondell Hunt is possibly the strongest powerlifter we have ever seen. There is an argument for that. And right now, like I said, Bobb Matthews isn't on a level to be able to beat Rondell realistically right now. However, he is only going to have to compete against Rondell Hunt in 2026 at the World Championships. And so for him to catch up with Rondell Hunt, he really needs to maximize his growth, maximize his strength growth over the next year. And so it kind of does make sense to not compete very much over the next year, because competitions create fatigue, and it also doesn't allow him to put on as much muscle. And so I do understand him deciding to take the next year out to just really focus on getting as strong as possible. But you may ask yourself, why did he decide to do the World Games? And I think that it could be two reasons. The first reason is because I think that Bobb really values beating the big names in powerlifting. He went against Brandon Petrie in the 93s. He also went against Keenan Lee and Ashton Ruska in the 105s. He's moved up to the 120s to go against Rondell Hunt. However, he is going to have a unique opportunity at the World Games. This is because at the World Games, they actually combine weight classes. So he is going to be competing against under 120 lifters and under 120 plus lifters. And this means that he will be able to compete against Jesus Oliveras. And I think this presents a unique opportunity for Bobb Matthews to tick Jesus off his box of massive powerlifters that he has beaten. So that could be one reason why he decided to go to the World Games. The other reason is because I think he has to compete in 2025 to be able to go to the Powerlifting American Nats in 2026. And so he may have decided that he may want to get a World Games title This is because the World Games is arguably the most prestige competition in powerlifting. It happens once every 4 years, and like I said, it's basically like the Olympics. So those are the two reasons why he may have decided to compete at the World Games. Also, it could be that there is just a completely separate reason why he decided to not compete this year. It could be due to some external factor that I don't know. And if that's true, I apologize. However, I have had a few messages that have told me that I am along the right lines with my analysis for why he has decided to not compete. But what do you guys think? Do you think it's the right decision for Bob Matthews to not compete much this year? It is a strange decision. It's a weird decision. However, it's also a decision that could pay off. To beat Rondell Hunt, you need to take risks. You're going to have to sacrifice some things. This sacrifice could be a world championship for Bob. And so I do understand Bob's decision. However, like I said, it's a unique decision, but Bob Matthews is a unique person. That's why so many people love him. That's why so many people watch his videos, because he brings a unique energy, a unique way of thinking to powerlifting. And it's probably the reason why he has got to the top, because he's willing to make big sacrifices to allow him to achieve his big goal. So yeah, it will be very interesting to see how this plays out. It will be very interesting to see if Bob's risk of not competing much this year will pay off and he will actually be able to beat Rondell. Oh yeah, one more thing. Because Bob is moving up a weight class, right now he only weighs about 109 kg, 110 kg. And so he needs time to really build up his muscle. And so that's why he may be focusing on that and not going to the World Championships. But yeah, it's an interesting story. It will be interesting to see what Rondell Hunt does at the PA Nats in a couple of weeks. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye. Leave a like, subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Have a good day.